I would like to welcome the Honourable Anthony Albanese, Prime Minister of Australia. It's a pleasure and privilege to have him visit our campus and address our students, faculty and staff. All the more exciting for us since we have active and increasing engagement with Australian universities. We all look forward to hearing you, Prime Minister. Over to you.
Well, thank you very much. I'm very pleased for all of me to be here, given the fallback here. Students, faculty, Australian alumni, distinguished guests, namaskar. It is indeed such an honour to be here at what is not just one of India's most prestigious centres of higher education, but a place of world renown. A place of world renown that is publicly run and funded. Professor Banerjee, Dr. Saran and everyone at IIT Delhi, and the Observer Research Foundation, thank you so much for hosting us this afternoon. This is my third visit to India, but my first as Prime Minister. The first, I hope, of many, and I'll certainly be back at the G20 in September. I'm very pleased that my arrival has coincided with Holi. In all its colour and joy, this festival has become a beloved fixture on the Australian calendar. It is so good to see it here at Source. It partly set the scene for this visit, a celebration of the close partnership between our two nations. But the visit is also very much about the future. Because of our track record together, it's a future that I feel ambitious about. It's an ambition backed by a keen awareness that we have so much to do. I'm the latest in a long line of Australian Prime Ministers who have come to India to celebrate and pay tribute to the warm and close relationship that our two nations share. And as I've moved from Ahmedabad to Mumbai to Delhi, the message I've delivered is this: Australia and India have never been closer, but we can do even more together in the future. To solidify the Australia-India relationship is one of the most consequential in our region, to bring our economies and people closer still, and to solve the greatest challenges of our time. Our comprehensive strategic partnership achieved in 2020 and the recent India-Australia Economic Cooperation and Trade Agreement have laid the groundwork for more Australian-Indian cooperation. But now is the time to make these achievements count. Let's now lay out a pathway to deepen the work we do together across our entire spectrum of endeavour. My discussions with Prime Minister Modi at our annual Leaders Summit today, as well as my engagements over the past few days, have zeroed in on the areas where I'd like to see even more collaboration: trade, investment in the economy, strategic and security engagement, and a future built on clean energy. On trade in the economy, our two-way trade more than doubled in the 7 years to 2021. But I'd like to see that growth move even faster. This is a priority for my government. We believe in free trade and we are working hard to deepen and diversify Australia's trade links and our supply chains. If the global shocks of the past few years have taught us anything, it is that we need to pay more attention to global supply chains. The experience of recent years has shown us that it's important to diversify our trading base, but also to strengthen our existing trading relationships. And it has shown us that the economic complementarity between Australia and India is growing. We are natural partners, not only in traditional areas, but increasingly in newer ones, as we seize the opportunities of the transition to net zero, shaping the future rather than let it shape us. So we're looking at ways to help businesses on both sides of the Indian Ocean benefit from easier access to each other's markets. I've been accompanied to India by more than 20 Australian business leaders from major companies. Among them are representatives of the transport, resources, finance, university, energy, architecture and design, health, commodities and information technology sectors. In addition to that, there's a smart energy delegation here as well, some of whom have joined us here today. They've briefed me on the fruitful discussions they've had this week with Indian counterparts as part of the Australia-India CEO Forum and the opportunities for deepening cooperation. I'm also pleased to say that negotiations are well underway for a full, comprehensive economic cooperation agreement, one that we hope will open access even further and that I want to conclude by the end of this year. And I'd like to take this opportunity to announce the appointment of Tim Thomas as the inaugural Chief Executive Officer of the Centre for Australia-India Relations. The centre, which we will open later this year, will work across government, industry, academia and community to build a greater understanding of the Australia-India relationship and support opportunities that arise flowing from our growing connections. On education, we're also hoping to break new ground. And I mean that in a very literal sense, because I was so pleased to announce in Ahmedabad that Australia's Deakin University will be the first foreign university in the world approved to open a physical campus in India at Gujarat's Gift City. It will be followed by Wollongong University that will also open a campus at Gift City. This is a place where Indian students aspiring to study in Australia can do part of their degrees in Australia, part in India. And I hope as well that Australian students take up the opportunity to do either the first half or the second half of their degrees right here in India as well. We also have announced, our newest Maitri scholarships, which will provide that chance as well. And I know there are members of the faculty here at IIT Delhi and in the audience now who are Australian University alumni. Put up your hands if there's any of you here. There we go, up the back there. G'day, welcome. Last time I was in Delhi in 2018, I was honoured to launch the Australian Alumni Association of India website here in Delhi. I very much want to see growing numbers of Australian and Indian students to have the experiences of living and studying in our respective countries and to bring those experiences home. Think of it as human cross-pollination, that through it we draw from each other's strengths but add to our own. And in the process, each of us becomes something greater. I know that many of us learnt during the pandemic to communicate through Zoom calls, but there's nothing quite like seeing the eyes of someone that you're actually engaging with, the real human interaction that we as social beings not just want as an add-on. I believe very firmly it's a part of who we are, and that's why it's important. Of course, joining up our best minds is not just desirable, it's a necessity, especially where the globe's biggest challenges are concerned. And it was Gandhi who said that Earth can provide enough to satisfy every human's needs, but only if we let it. In the face of a changing climate, both Australia and India have begun to heed such warnings with the seriousness that they deserve. Prime Minister Modi's remarkable goal for India to install 500 gigawatts of renewable energy capacity by 2030 will have a profound impact on the global energy transition. The global move to a clean energy economy is here, and it's shifting gears very, very quickly. To get a sense of what is possible, just have a look at what you in India have already achieved. Between 2018 and 2021, India increased solar generation by 31 terawatt hours. That's enough power for 24.7 million Indian families. Over the next 2 years, domestic production of solar cells and solar modules in India is expected to more than double. Australia is blessed with abundant resources used in the production of renewable energy, so it makes sense for Australia and India to work together. Working together means our goals can be reached sooner, and the benefits of reduced costs and greater access to renewables can be shared with our trading partners too. India's manufacturing scale and huge domestic demand, Australia's abundance of critical minerals and our combined research nous means there's plenty of mutual gain. It's my hope that our deepening cooperation on new and renewable energy can drive new innovation and investment. And with Prime Minister Modi, I've just announced the agreement that has been signed just today to enhance the solar cooperation between our two nations. I look forward. And I very much look forward to seeing new clean energy projects, particularly on solar, but also green hydrogen, come to fruition, because in them we see one of the substantial foundations on which we can build a better future. Across all of this work, from the economy to education to clean energy, India and Australia are seeking to work together. Our interests are converged. We're aligned in our respect for the kind of planet we want our children and our grandchildren to inherit. We're aligned in our belief in education as a public good and our commitment to democratic principles. Australia is committed to a global order that's free and fair and an Indo-Pacific region where sovereignty is respected. Our defence links are crucial and they're growing. And I'm very pleased that Australia will host Exercise Malabar for the first time this year. Building real collaboration with partners like India, Japan and the US is a good thing. But our strategic partnership isn't only about defence links, as important as they are to regional stability and balance. We are, and we need to be, strategic partners in a much deeper sense, working together and through structures like the Quad to support stability and rules and fairness in the Indo-Pacific. We have a huge year ahead of us. India is hosting the G20 and Australia in May will host the Quad Leaders meeting. I've had excellent talks with Prime Minister Modi and his team on the forward agenda over these days. Building the region we want requires sustained partnerships. It requires partnerships that are defined by deep trust, by collective strength, by shared values. And we believe that India is a natural leader in the Indian Ocean, the world's fastest growing major economy. Now, over these days, we have pledged to find new ways to capitalise on our strengths, to manage logistics and collaborate on research that benefits us both. Working side by side, building on the foundations of a partnership, decades in the making, with a huge potential that is within our reach. And one of the advantages and the real difference that it will make is having the diaspora in Australia, which is some 800,000 strong, means that those people-to-people links are so important going forward. Can I give a little bit of history in conclusion, which is that when India gained independence, a tricolour was unfurled at a midnight ceremony at New Delhi's Constitution Hall. Mere hours later, the flag was raised more than 10,000 kilometres away in my new home of Canberra. It was the first official flag raising of the flag outside of India. Australia's Foreign Minister at the time, Doc Evatt, used the moment to paint a picture of the relationship as he saw it, and he said this: "Our geographical proximity and our common interest in the affairs of the Indian Ocean naturally throw our lots closely together." Well, in that time, we've become closer still, because Evatt was right. But from my vantage point today, it's safe to say there's nothing thrown together about our relationship. It's been a series of very deliberate choices, and my government, and I must say that Narendra Modi's government have been very clear as well that they share this, that they are making, together we are making the choice to strengthen the relationship. But it's also a choice being made by our people, much more than just our leaders. Those who've crossed the Indian Ocean for travel or trade, searching for new opportunities or fresh perspectives, and those who've chosen to build their lives on distant shores. It is these bonds of family, of migration, of friendship, and yes, indeed, given the test is going rather well for us, perhaps a dash of cricket, that the soul of the India-Australia relationship resides. It's easy to see why Australia and India are today such natural partners, and why there is so much more that together we can do, we should do, and we will do. So just as I'm so energised by being here in your dynamic and vibrant country, I'm energised by the opportunities before us. A shared future, one built on trust, respect, affection, and an embrace of a better tomorrow. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Prime Minister.
Was informing him of the proceedings at the test match. Australia is doing well. Prime Minister, welcome to India.
Stephen Smith has said that he'll get me to go to all of the opening day mornings from this point on.
Prime Minister, thank you so much for speaking to us, and thank you for your wonderful address. Lots of questions, but because we are running against a clock, I'm going to pose a couple of questions, and then we have lots of interest from the students here to speak to you, and we have picked out 3 questions from hundreds of them, and I'll pose some of them to you as well. But before I do that, you mentioned this is the 3rd visit. Perhaps just to get started, how has India changed? Any lessons for Australia from this change?
Well, I came here for the first time in 1991 as a backpacker with my partner. We arrived in New Delhi at about 3 a.m. in the morning and went to a place that we booked online. Well, not online, it wouldn't have existed then. We booked, I'm not quite sure how, at Connaught Place here, and it was reasonably quiet at 3 a.m. in the morning, but we went out the next day, and I remember the first line of the guidebook was that India is an attack on the senses. Sight, sound, smell, just all of your senses were enlivened here. And that was certainly the case. We went out for a couple of hours and then went back exhausted. During that trip, I caught trains. We hitched a ride from Agra to Jaipur. We caught the video buses. We did every form of transport possible, and we stayed in. We didn't have much money then. I was in my mid-20s, and so we did it very different. But from what I'm doing it now with, you know, police escorts. So it's, I've changed. I couldn't do that now. But I got to see some of the real India. If you want to see a country, don't come as Prime Minister, come and catch a train and queue for the tickets and do that. I've just seen the development. I came back, the last time I was here was 2018. I led a delegation and I went to Akshardham, and I then caught, my High Commission were horrified that I broke away and said I'm going by myself and I'm going to catch the metro that didn't exist in 1991, and then walk to see the Hindu temple there that I wanted to go and see it because of my Indian friends had told me how wonderful it was, and it was a great occasion. The development in India has been extraordinary. They just developed, just extraordinary. The lifting of people out of poverty, the providing people who, still more to do of course, but with energy, transportation, with the lifting of living standards is a remarkable achievement. The last time I was here as well, I went to places like Hyderabad, looking at startups and the IT industry, what we're looking at outside there as well. India has gone from what was seen in 1991, it was seen as being brave by my friends, where you're going to India to backpack around India. The perception of India in the world now is very different from what it was in 1991. It is a major economy, and that's a great tribute to the people of India, essentially. And so I see a massive change. And one of the things that I saw at the cricket yesterday, the Narendra Modi Stadium, is an example of two things. One, the development of India. It's as good a stadium as anywhere in the world. It's the largest. It's quite extraordinary. But it was also an example of collaboration. There was an Australian architect from a company that's based in Brisbane who helped design that. So it is an example of how far India has progressed.
Prime Minister, one thing also that has changed since 1991, we started defeating you in cricket, but we'll come to that a bit later. Now,
You even beat us in Australia now. with half your team down with COVID, you still beat us in Australia.
Prime Minister, we at the ORF were delighted to host the first public-facing Quad Foreign Ministers panel last week at Raisina Dialogue. It was a symbolic moment for all our countries who are working together for a shared vision on this region. It's a complex world. It's a world where you have contest, competition, conflict. We also have challenges of climate change and development. It is true of the Indian Ocean region. It is also true of the Pacific Ocean region. How can both of us work together to respond to both this crazy geopolitical moment as well as the real development and climate challenges that we confront?
Look, I think our economies are really complementary. We have an enormous reserve of critical minerals, for example. We have everything that goes into a solar panel. We've been good at innovation. We haven't always been good at commercialising the opportunities. And India is an innovative nation. You have the resources that you have, the best resource you have is right here. 1.4 billion people, and an education system that is making it the case that you will have an ever-increasing, growing middle class. We share values in the region that are so important, the values of democracy, the values of peace and security. And one of the things I've been discussing with Prime Minister Modi and Foreign Minister Jaishankar, is increased presence, including together in the Indo-Pacific as well. How do we work together to provide the opportunities for some of the Pacific Island nations who see, quite rightly, climate change as an existential threat to their very existence? Nations like Tuvalu and Kiribati in the Pacific. But working together in the Indian Ocean and the Pacific are very important. We also, the work that we will do through the East Asia Summit, ASEAN, will be important. I think this year, I'm sure people here recognise how significant India hosting the G20 is, because India is in a unique position because it is the 5th largest economy in the world, and yet it's classified still as a developing nation. So Prime Minister Modi today was talking to me about a conference he held of the South.
Yes.
Now, India can provide that leadership there, but can also, of course, be it's a major economy, which means it has such an important role to play. There can be no solution to climate change without India being very central to that. And so I am really positive. My government, in part, was elected because of our commitment to act on climate change.
On climate change, first of all, it's great to have Australia back in the business, in the green transitions business. So I think we are all looking forward to Australian leadership because of its traditional strength in both innovation and financial services that the sector seeks, but also in terms of the critical minerals that it possesses. Since both of us have ambitious targets on green transitions, on responding to the climate challenge, what could we do to pave the way for our businesses to invest together, to invest in each other, to build a green world in partnership?
I think the development of our ECTA, our trade agreement, was good. It went through from last December. But the idea of a comprehensive economic cooperation agreement, taking it to a higher level. We have with me as well the CEOs of our major companies, as well as our peak business organisations. And yesterday in Mumbai, an agreement was signed by our peak major business organisation, the Business Council of Australia, and the Indian peak organisation as well. And I see that as the business community recognising that their cooperation and alliances and partnerships will be important. If you combine that with government doing the same thing, with the commitment and the vision that we see for industries like green hydrogen to transform, green steel. You have companies like BlueScope Steel have a partnership with Tata here in India. The provision of green steel is these things are going to happen. It's a matter of who gets first mover advantage in doing so, and therefore secures its position at the head of the queue. I see that Australia has not just the potential, but that we will become a renewable energy superpower because of where we're positioned. But India will be too, because of the advantages that it has going forward. So I just see that there is an enormous opportunity for us to work together and collaborate for partnerships. I met with one Indian company yesterday in Mumbai that are looking at billions of dollars of investment in Australia. And we have sound legal systems, both of us as well. You have, I think, a position of being able to provide that that certainty going forward, which is the basis of security of investment as well.
And Prime Minister, a shout out to IIT Delhi. I think you saw some exhibits outside that were focusing on solutions that all of us seek.
Absolutely, and you know what we can have as well, and I know that there are a number of people from our university sector here, and one of the ones that I saw outside was collaboration with the University of Queensland. There are our educational institutions have more than 400 agreements with Indian companies or Indian institutions. That's many more times than the institutions which we have, educational institutions. And that is important. How we commercialise those opportunities. One of the things I thought of when I was outside there was how similar, because there was a lot of emphasis on energy efficiency and saving. There's similar work. I was at Wollongong University a couple of weeks ago. Similar work being done. This is about economic advantage and opportunity, but it's also about saving the planet. It's also about making sure that there is mass production and that we lower global emissions, and that's why the cooperation is so important. But I can see that the fact of our common history as well that we share a language. Of course, India has many languages, but it makes a major difference that we understand each other, I think, very well.
We move to questions from students and faculty at IIT Delhi. The first, of course, is from a student in IIT Delhi, Aksh Goyal. How do you think education can impact the growth of a country, including in the Australian context? And what is your policy towards keeping education up to date in the Australian system?
I'd make 2 points. One is that education is about growing an economy, but it's also about the nature of the society and the economy that you're growing. It's also about expanding opportunity. Education is the key to opportunity. I was the first person in my family to finish school, let alone go to university. And that's a common story in Australia, and I'm sure that's a common story here. I'm certain that for a whole range of people in this room, they're the first people in their family to go to university, but their kids will have even more opportunity. It's the key. It opens the doors of opportunity, and we need to, if we're going to grow the economy in a way that's fair as well, education's also the key to productivity, new ideas, new thought processes that lead to more efficiency, that lead to more growth as well. So I see education as being something that benefits individuals, but also benefits the society, and that's why my government is very much concentrating, not just university education as well, but other areas too, like TAFE, and for us, technical education as well is very important, so that we have the skills and the workforce being identified in the future as an economy changes.
Prime Minister, the second question posed to you is actually from an Australian alumni. He's a faculty member at IIT Delhi, Dibakar Rakshit. And his question to you is, how can we deepen and promote collaborations between Australian and Indian educational institutions?
Well, I think the presence of Australian institutions here in India will make an enormous difference. It's a very big deal that Deakin will be the first university to be literally, as I said in my speech, a concrete example of collaboration. But as well, you don't have to have just that. The collaboration clearly that you've got with the University of Queensland here is another example. But I think the idea of Australians coming to study here and do part of their degree in India, and Indian students doing part of their degree in Australia, and it being recognised across across is so important. One of the agreements that we've made in the last couple of weeks as well, my Education Minister Jason Clare was here just last week, is for recognition of qualifications. That's been something that's been a problem in the past, and getting that common recognition is very important, so that people can work with the qualification that they have in either jurisdiction. I think freeing up some of the bureaucratic issues with visas in my country has been something that has held back. So we're very keen on expanding that and making it easier to get a visa to study in Australia as well, because we think that we're in a competitive global environment now, and it's a competitive global environment for labour, for capital, for education, and we want to compete because we think that coming and living in Australia for a period of time and coming back and being a graduate and joining the Alumni Association is a pretty good, we think it's a pretty good place to spend a few years.
Prime Minister, the final question for this particular conversation is from student Virat Yadav, IIT Delhi. Actually, this is quite a personal question. How are you improving trade relations with India?
That is a personal question, and a good one. Well, the first thing I've done, I think, is to go back to the first question I was asked. I think coming here with a backpack on in 1991, before phones, thank goodness, mobile phones, life was much simpler, but it was much harder as well to navigate. Like, you had to actually go to the train station to buy a ticket and queue. And one of the things that is a constant from my visit in 1991 and other visits since then is just the warmth of the Indian people. You are a friendly culture, as is, I think, Australia as well. When you stand out as myself and my future wife did at Delhi Station buying tickets to catch a train, people come up and they'll help you. It really is a positive. So I think a starting point is, I want to come to India. I enjoy this vibrant, dynamic country. I think it's fascinating, and your history is fascinating as well. And I think people can see that when I've spoken with the Prime Minister or others as well. I've met in my election. I was elected Prime Minister on the 21st of May last year. On a Saturday we have our elections. On Monday morning, the 23rd of May at 9 a.m, I was sworn in as Prime Minister, and 2 hours later I was on a plane to meet with Prime Minister Modi, Prime Minister Kishida and President Biden. And since then I've had meetings with Prime Minister Modi at the East Asia Summit in Japan for, we both attended Shinzo Abe's funeral, and then over the last couple of days. So I haven't been Prime Minister for a year yet, but I've had 4 meetings with your Prime Minister, and I think that says something about the relationship which is there, and I will host Prime Minister Modi in May and be back here in September, and he's invited me to come back again at the end of the year for another bilateral. So it looks like we will have had 7 meetings in a very short period of time. And the relationship in the last 3 weeks, my Treasurer, my Education Minister, my Foreign Minister, my Defence Minister, have all been here as well, and with me is our Trade and Tourism Minister and our Resources Minister on this visit. So virtually the whole Cabinet has been here in a very short period of time. And I think that development of people-to-people relations, as well as the educational institutions who are here, the businesses who are here, certainly our sporting teams, particularly in cricket, which we both have a love of, those relations are so important, but at each occasion as well, we're coming up with concrete reforms and changes so that we will host the Malabar Defence Exercises later this year. We will have the education institutions established here, the first one later this year in just a few months. We have the trade agreement where the barriers to trade, tariffs, have been reduced substantially, and we're having joint ventures as a result. We will have the cooperative agreement hopefully concluded by the end of this year as well. Today we had agreements on sport, on music and culture, including film. We think that Australia is a great place to have collaboration about Bollywood movies, but also us here as well. And that industry is very important. We had agreements about solar and research in an institute. The Australia-India Relations Institute that we'll establish in Sydney later this year will be important as well in building those relations. So I'm very confident about what we are going to do. I'm the leader, but I have a whole team behind me, and they're very much committed to it. And the 800,000 Australians of Indian descent will make sure that they join on that journey and push the government to have strong relations as well.
I can already see Eleanor moving there, and it's a sign of the time being up. But I have to ask you this question: what's happening in the Test match?
As Australia have done quite well, but I do worry. I was watching the second Test. I went downstairs to get a glass of water, and I came up and I sort of looked.
Fantastic. Prime Minister.
3 wickets in about 3 seconds. So we'll see how we go, but I think 2-2 would be a great result.
Fantastic. Prime Minister, congratulations on a very successful visit. Clearly, this partnership is going to be consequential for the decade ahead. And Prime Minister, you're holding one of the pens. Wish you all the best and look forward to receiving you for your 4th visit to India later this year.
Thank you very much. And can I thank everyone for coming along today?
Can I request Professor Sagar to come?
I think I'm supposed to be here.